William Blake's poem Holy Thursday from Songs of Innocence. On the surface, it seems so simple, right? It's this beautiful, almost angelic scene of children singing in a church. But, with Blake, there's always something else going on under the hood. So let's dive in and really peel back those layers to see what he was truly trying to say.
And to get a feel for just how powerful this scene was, you've got to hear this. The famous composer Joseph Haydn saw the exact same event that Blake is writing about, and he said no music had ever moved him so deeply. I mean, that sets the stage perfectly, doesn't it? Blake is dropping us right into a moment that feels totally pure, innocent, and beautiful. So, here's our game plan. First, we'll set the historical scene. Then, we'll walk through the poem itself, looking at its beautiful surface. After that, though, we're going to start looking for the cracks in that perfect facade, bring in its much darker companion poem, and finally, get to the heart of what Blake was really saying about charity.
Okay, first things first. What even was this Holy Thursday event? Because this wasn't something Blake's just made up.
This was a huge deal in 18th century London. Every year, on Ascension Day, thousands of poor and orphan kids from the city's charity schools would get cleaned up, put in their uniforms, and literally paraded into St. Paul's Cathedral to sing for the wealthy people who funded the schools. It was this massive public performance of piety and generosity.
All right, now let's turn to the poem itself. We're going to read it through the first time with our Innocence glasses on, just like that sentimental observer Haydn might have seen it.
Right off the bat, Blake paints this incredibly vivid picture. You can just see this grand, orderly procession, right? You've got the bright colors of their uniforms, the clean faces, and this sense of massive scale as the children just flow like a river into the cathedral. It's a really cinematic opening.
So Blake is just layering on all this positive imagery. You've got the innocent faces clean, the vibrant red and blue and green, the movement is perfectly structured, 2 and 2, and that last line, wow, comparing them to the flowing Thames gives this feeling of a huge, powerful, natural force.
And he's using a classic poetic tool to do this, the simile. A simile is just a comparison using like or as. So he compares the officials' wands to something pure, as white as snow, and the children's movement to London's great river, like Thames water's flow. These comparisons just dial up that feeling of grandeur and purity.
Okay, so now the children are inside St. Paul's, and the imagery gets even more heavenly. Blake writes, "Oh, what a multitude they seemed, these flowers of London town, seated in companies they sit, with a radiance all their own. The hum of multitudes was there, but multitudes of lambs, thousands of little boys and girls raising their innocent hands."
You see what he's doing here? These kids practically glow with an inner radiance. He elevates them by comparing them to the most innocent things imaginable, delicate flowers, and, this is a big one, multitudes of lambs, a really powerful Christian symbol of innocence and sacrifice. And this is a fantastic example of a metaphor. Blake's not just saying the kids are like flowers or lambs, he's saying they are flowers, they are lambs. It's a direct comparison, and it totally transforms them from poor kids into these powerful symbols of natural beauty and spiritual purity.
The last stanza is the big climax. This is where the children start to sing. Their voices rise up like a mighty wind, like harmonious thunderings in heaven itself. And then Blake gives us what seems to be a very clear moral lesson at the end.
The sound they make is just immense. It's like a force of nature. And notice this little detail. The aged men, their so-called guardians, are sitting beneath them. It puts the children in this higher, spiritually superior position. The poem ends with this beautiful, simple message. Be kind, because these children are basically angels.
And that's a lovely thought. It's a beautiful poem. But this is William Blake we're talking about. He was a fierce critic of his society. So we have to stop and ask ourselves, is that really all there is to it? Is this just a sweet celebration? Or is he showing us something else hiding in plain sight? Okay, so let's rewind. Let's go back and look at those very same words, but this time, let's look for the irony, because when you do, a much, much darker picture starts to emerge. Okay, think about this. Why does he have to say their faces are clean? It kind of suggests that normally they're dirty, right? And them walking 2 and 2. Is that really unity, or is it more like rigid military-style discipline? And those wands as white as snow? Well, the Beatles were church officials in charge of discipline, and those wands were often canes or rods used to keep order. Suddenly, that pure white image seems pretty sinister. This whole thing starts to feel less like a celebration and more like a staged performance, a put-on generosity to make the rich folks feel good. Now, if you have any doubt that Blake's being critical, well, he basically gave us the answer key a few years later when he published his Songs of Experience. He wrote a companion poem with the exact same title.
I mean, there is zero ambiguity here. He just comes right out and asks, is this a holy thing to see? How can you call this holy, he says, in a rich country that lets its children be reduced to misery? He calls the hand that feeds them cold and usurious, meaning it's exploitative, not actually charitable.
And this side-by-side comparison just makes it crystal clear. It's absolutely devastating. The majestic, harmonious thunderings from the first poem, now he asks, is that trembling cry a song? The beautiful flowers of London town, now he says, their sun does never shine. And those innocent multitudes of lambs, they're revealed for what they are, babes reduced to misery.
So, in the world of experience, the pretty facade is completely torn away. Blake just exposes the grim reality behind the big show. These aren't angels being celebrated. They're victims of a system that puts them on display once a year, but neglects and exploits them the rest of the time.
So, after all that, what's Blake's ultimate point? What is he trying to tell us about charity, about his society, and about compassion?
It really all boils down to this. Blake is attacking the massive hypocrisy of a society that pats itself on the back for its charity, all while creating the poverty and misery that makes the charity necessary in the first place. That huge ceremony in St. Paul's, it isn't a solution, it's just a beautiful mask to hide a very ugly problem.
So Blake's protest is really aimed at a few big targets. He's questioning the morality of the church as an institution for presiding over this hollow spectacle. He's protesting the exploitation of children, and most importantly, he's forcing us to see the difference between just performing piety and practicing genuine, active compassion, the kind that actually tries to fix suffering, not just put it on display.
And that leaves us with a huge question, one that feels just as relevant today, maybe even more so. Blake forces us to look past the beautiful performance and see the uncomfortable truth underneath. He's asking us to be critical of charity that's more about making ourselves feel good than about creating real change. So, over 200 years later, the question for us is, how do we tell the difference between the two?